got to so far. You've seen Final Cut Pro working in DV, just as it is, out of the box. And now we've just seen it working in SD, standard definition, running with the Cinewave card, as you've seen, or the digital video. And you've seen all of those solutions all wrapped around Final Cut Pro. It's working with the same piece of software, exactly the same. So your workflow is exactly the same, regardless of what format you're using. So that's two of the major ones, DV and SD. Now there's another format. There's another format that's coming up fast. There's a lot of people starting to use this, and there's some, I'm not sure what the date is in the US, but there's a certain date, I think it's in about 2 years' time, yeah. 2004, something like that, when almost all of the production output will be in HD, high definition format. Is anybody here working in high definition yet? Anybody thinking of moving to HD? One or two of you. Okay, so what we're going to actually do now is we're actually going to explore the possibilities of the HD format. And what we're using is we're using some of the same equipment, and we're using this as well. This is the Cinewave breakout box for HD, which we have connected down here. And there are lots of different elements to the HD story. There are all new cameras and decks, for instance, that you use for HD. So this is the Sony HD W750p, a full high definition camera, and also the high definition decks as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand back to Graham, because he has all of that plugged in on his machine over there. And Graham's just going to run you through high definition.
And again, there's not much to show you that we haven't already shown you. I'm using the same application that I used for DV, Final Cut Pro. Standard definition, Final Cut Pro. Here I am in high definition, and I'm using Final Cut Pro version 3, exactly the same software. I hope you're getting the message here. I've got exactly the same interface, I've got exactly the same way of working. I can put this down here and I can just play this back for you. Okay, it's just a standard day in Scotland, as you can see. By the way, can I just say, on behalf of Celtic supporters all over the world, Henrik Larsson, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, so this stuff just works. There in fact is the Celtic defensive back line. Anyhow, all of this stuff is in high def, and it's just working here on the same equipment I've got on stage using exactly the same software. I can add transitional effects onto this. If I just come down here, let's put a transition on there, a little keyboard shortcut, put a transitional effect. You can preview that transitional effect in the quick view. You can do everything exactly the same. I could even go and media manage this off and work with it on my PowerBoot as offline RT. It's exactly the same stuff. Just to further underline that point, there's a guy called Martin Herring, who is a producer and a director, and normally the kind of stuff he's been doing, all that stuff works typically in standard definition. But he got a specific job that he had to do. This was a job for, basically it was a sheikh who's got Arabic horses on a farm in England. And he wanted to have a party and to show some of the investors in his livestock exactly what the beauty and all these things were of the horses. So again, we did that. We made a little movie of it, and I'll show you.
My name's Martin Herring. I'm a freelance director. The project I've just been working on is called Mares and Foals. It was commissioned by Darley, which is a stud farm in the horse racing business in Newmarket. If there was going to be a more demanding audience, I don't know where we'd get it from. You know, they really were keen to see every part of the horse in action. It had to be something that would project, something that would really work for a big audience in a big space. The solution that we went for was high definition. One of the specifics that I needed was the ability to have really good real-time slow motion. That's not something that I could do with standard definition. Everything that I've done at difference so far has been standard def, but by the time I got to using the high def, I noticed no difference, just the same process. Final Cut Pro is resolution independent, so it doesn't matter to me whether I'm working high def or standard definition. Process is the same. It was the first thing I've actually done on high definition, and I'm really keen to carry it on now. My next broadcast projects, I'm definitely pushing to do it on high definition.
Really is that simple. There's almost no transition when it comes to the editing. Absolutely the same. Okay? So, where are we? At the beginning of today we said we're going to show you all these different formats. DV, SD, HD, and how one application, Final Cut Pro version 3, handles all of them. It is one solution, and we do all formats. Or do we? What about this stuff? Yeah, you go to the cinema, they don't show you TV, they don't show you SD, they don't show you HD, they show you film. So how do you work in film? We have a solution for that, and here's Martin to tell you all about it.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so there is a solution for film. It's called Cinema Tools. Now, there are certain, shall we say, challenging elements to editing with film and all that kind of stuff. And what Cinema Tools is there to do is to help you with all of that. I'm just going to show you this slide here. This is all about editing film on video. Okay, you start with film, and then you go through this process called the telecine process. And then what we do is we take that, from that process we then go into Cinema Tools. Cinema Tools then allows us to very easily edit within Final Cut Pro. And then from that we can create a cut list, which can then go back to the people who are working with the film itself, and they can do the conform. They can conform that film to that. Okay, so let me switch back to my machine over here and just show you a little bit about what Cinema Tools does. Okay, so here you can see that I'm in Cinema Tools. Now, some of the challenges that are involved in editing video, film on video, is this. If you're working in film, you're shooting at 24 frames per second. If you're editing a video, you're probably working, if you're working on PAL, you're working at 25 frames a second. If you're unfortunate enough to be American, like Mr. Warner over there, who's just walking down the back, he's having to work on NTSC, which runs at 29.97. Now these are very, very complex issues when it comes to actually doing the edits, because you're running at a very different speed on there. Now Cinema Tools enables you to solve those issues for you and allow you to edit your film project from within Final Cut Pro. Okay, so what we've done is we've got this some footage from a film that was shot on 35mm at 24 frames a second and telecined to PAL. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new database here within Cinema Tools with those settings. Okay, so you can see my 35mm, a video frame rate of 25 frames per second, and the film speed at 24. Okay, so let's hit the OK button on here and let's create a new database. Let me create it on my desktop and call it Stockholm. That means I can possibly have a chance of finding it later. Now at the moment I've created an empty database. Just an empty database here, and we've got two windows open to us at this point. Now what I want to do is I want to start adding our film elements into there. So I'm going to import our telecine log. Now it comes in what's called a flex file, an FLX file. Now this flex file is the standard kind of file that comes from a telecine. Okay, so it's going to tell me that it's imported 54 elements there, and you can see there is the data from that. Now you'll notice it's got lots of useful information on there. It's got slate information, the lab roll, so which roll of film it was on, the cam roll, so which camera roll it came from, and the key code. The key code is time code but for film. Now if I just double click on one of these, you can see the second window here that we have within Cinema Tools. This is the detail view. Now this tells us lots of information about that particular clip, if you like. So you can see on there, you can see that it's got the scene number and the take number, all of that detailed information. Now you'll notice that all of this is changeable. All this information, you can go in here and change this information. And that's really important, and it's a really key part of what Cinema Tools provides for you. Because what Cinema Tools is actually providing is a huge amount of power, and it's actually achieving what's known as the holy grail in film editing. It's allowing you to edit your film project at a true frame rate. Okay, so something that's just so difficult to do, but we're doing it very easily in here. Now, Cinema Tools isn't what I'm going to use to capture my footage. Okay, this is my telecine log, and it's not what I'm going to use to capture the footage itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually batch capture this and create a batch capture list that I'm going to make for Final Cut Pro. So I'm just going to say OK to that, and we're going to say, let's call this the batch list, and save that onto my desktop. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to launch Final Cut Pro here, and I've already got that open, okay? I've got my scene in here that I'm going to work on, but what I want to do is I want to import that. Okay, so I want to import a batch list at 25 frames per second. There it is. Choose that, and it brings it in. Now, you can see that it's brought those clips into Final Cut Pro, and it's got a red line through there. If I double click on any of those, it's going to tell me that media is offline. I haven't captured it yet. So now we can actually go to the material that was created in telecine and capture that if we wanted to. Now, I'm obviously in demo here, so I actually want to just speed this up. We've already got some captured. So I'm just going to go to my scene 45 here and reconnect that media to some that we have already on the desktop. So it's gone off, it's found that media, choose that, and it's now reconnected the footage in there. So now if I just double click on one of these, you can see that we have that footage in there. Okay, so this is a film that's been telecined, and we've now brought it in as DVPAL footage. Now there's something very important that you should do at this particular stage, and people that are doing this, they have, everybody has their jargon. Well, this is called a sanity check, and the sanity check is basically you go back into Cinema Tools, and by using the tools that are available to you in there, you can check that what you've captured is what is in the Cinema Tools database, in the Cinema Tools data. And it's very important because with any telecine equipment, it can actually make mistakes and actually have perhaps a misaligned frame or whatever. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect a clip back to the ones we've just captured, okay? So there's a clip we've just brought into Final Cut Pro and recaptured that into there, but now we're looking at it within our Cinema Tools. So we're cross-checking, and it's really important. If you don't do your cross-checking at this point, you can have lots of like dead film sitting on the floor at the end of your production. Now, from within this particular part of here, I can do various different things. I can set a poster frame for my Cinema Tools database so I can see exactly what that particular clip is about. You usually would choose something like the slate frame, so this one here, slate. I don't know what you call slate. What do you call slate in Sweden? It's called sticks and slate and whatever all over the place. The other thing you can do is you can conform that particular clip, should you want to, just on that particular one. Or you can do this clip analysis. And you can actually have a look at exactly what that clip's about. Or go into the identify. Now when you go into identify, this is where you use the power of Cinema Tools to cross-check that particular clip. And the way you do it is you actually look at the burn. This is the burn time code down here. And you make sure it's the same as the time code being shown in the Cinema Tools database. Okay, so once that's all done, and once you're happy with those clips, you can go off knowing you've done your sanity check and that everything's all fine and dandy. Okay, so just going back into Final Cut Pro for a second, I now have my clip in here, okay? All of my clips, I've just built, this is one that we created earlier, and I can just edit in this the same way as you've seen us edit all of this. I can even put things like optical dissolves in there. And I can test that and run that in real time in Final Cut Pro, just see the dissolve in there. And I'm creating all of my edits that I might want to do, all within Final Cut Pro. Remember, this is now a film project that I'm now editing in DVPAL. Now then, once you've done your edits and you've created your particular film part in there, you then need to take it back to film. And we have, there's a part of Final Cut Pro that you get with the Cinema Tools, which allows you to export that back in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to go to C45 here and say, okay, let's just export this back into a Cinema Tools film list. Okay? giving me a bunch of options there as to how I want to do this. I'm just going to use the defaults on this because we already have it set up. But you can do lots of different things in here about setting what cut handles are and all this kind of stuff. And then what it's going to do is it's simply going to create me a film list. So I'm just going to say, okay, let's save that to the desktop. It's asking me to locate now my Cinema Tools database because it wants to talk to that and make sure that all the information is going across and is happy. So I just need to go back to my desktop, and there's my database. Why does it keep snapping back to there? Hold on a second. There's my... Choose that. It's now seen that, it's clanked and word away, and it's created my cut list. Very, very simple, very straightforward within Cinema Tools. And all of the information is in there that needs to be done for that. So it's saying cut list shot 1, source starting at, source 3 starting at. All of that kind of information is in there. All of the information about the opticals, dissolves, all of that kind of stuff is perfectly in there and now ready to go off to the guy who's going to do the conform. So that is Cinema Tools working with Final Cut Pro. So just to summarize on all of that, do you want to summarize or shall I summarize?
You're exhausted, are you?
We're showing everything here. We've now seen Final Cut Pro working with DV, SD, HD, and now showing you with Cinema Tools how you can also work with film projects. And it's very important that this is all wrapped around these particular Apple software, and all wrapped around Final Cut Pro.
Okay, one version Final Cut Pro does all of that. Now, can we take questions later? Thanks. Alright. We've also got on stage just one of these at the moment. We've got what's called our X-Serve on here. We've also got them in the exhibition area. You can check those out. Now, we can use server technology in many ways when we're in the broadcasting or post-production business. I'm going to show you a couple of ideas what we could do with that. First of all, let me just show you what this X-Serve does. X-Serve is just a beautifully designed one UI, incredibly powerful twin processor Macintosh. We're running Mac OS 10 server 10.2 on there. I have, I'm here on a client. Just to give you an idea, server monitor will do this for me. I can look out across the network and see the server. Okay? I can say, well, let's have a look and maybe do some work with that server. Now, before I'm allowed to maybe shut the server down or whatever, I'm going to give it my password. So, you want to guess what my password is? Okay. And it brings up a status summary. So it's got the server name, I've got a very small network here with an IP address. And I can see all the information I need on this, about the drives, about the power, okay? Great things like the temperature. I can check to see if all the fans are running to make sure the temperature inside there is working. I can look at the network interfaces and make sure that, for example, here we've got 100 base T and they're on full duplex. Now, this is kind of easy because I'm doing it up here on a stage. This server could quite feasibly be back in Paris, and I could be looking at it across an IP, in other words, across the internet, to see what's going on with that server. I can maintain that. I can also say, well, look, you know, if there's a problem, alert me. Okay, send me an email, get that email to forward to my pager. Tell me if, for example, one of my drives or one of my power supplies goes down on there. Everything's there. The way I typically would have this running is everything's green, it's running. You know, don't show me anything unless a failure comes up. Because I might have multiple X-rays sitting in there. Okay? So that's one of the things. You can remotely administer and maintain your server right the way through to, in fact, if I hit the shutdown button, it will switch that server off. Because I've got authorization to do so. I've got the correct passwords for that. I'm not going to do that because Martin will have a cardiac if I shut the server down. Okay. But what can I use the server for? Well, again, if we think about the guys at Granada, okay? Oh, actually, before I do that, yeah, Granada TV. Yeah. The guys at Granada Television, they're using Final Cut Pro, but they're also using Apple X-Serve technology. They had a very specific problem that they needed to solve. And they used X-Serve to actually solve that problem.
We had 3 problems to solve. The first was a repository for our work in progress. The second was a requirement to FTP or stream media in QuickTime or MPEG-4 to our overseas clients. And the third was the formation of a content management-based solution for our natural history library based on 12,000 hours of footage. We looked at the available options in the market. Most of the content management solutions are just far too expensive for us. And what we chose to do was to invest in technology which we could build incrementally. We purchased 2 X servers. One was a content server, the other was a media server. On top of that, we put an SQL database and some bespoke software from a company called OKSO in Bristol. What we're able to do with the system is ingest, classify and retrieve any form of QuickTime media, be it web-based audio files, standard definition television or high definition television, and still images.
My name's Dave Hunt. I'm from OKSO Technologies and I've been working with Granada Media on the Xserve Media Management Solution. The software is built on Java, Jakarta, Tomcat and SQL database. The storage is extensible in that it can run from anything from the internal storage up to external RAID through fiber channel. The software solution is browser-based, which gives the benefit of being able to be accessed internally and externally.
The systems have performed brilliantly and they've provided a great deal of creative freedom from our production staff. The next stage of the project is to add remote rendering capability to the workstations on site and also to scale the storage because we're increasingly putting more media on